Hello and welcome to this week's Creator Weekly Live. I've got news and updates for the week ending August 4th, 2024. And I'm Peggy K. Today I'm going to have some updates for YouTube, for bloggers who use WordPress, and a bunch more. So thank you for joining me live. If you're here, please let me know what you think about this week's updates in the chat. So the first thing I wanted to say is that this summer is going way, way too fast for me. I can't believe it's August already, but here we are. And I always think of summer as being a time when there are fewer updates, there's less stuff going on, but that obviously isn't true. If you hear about this week's updates, lots of things happening and it never stops, basically. So I try and keep myself up to date and share all that information with you. This week's top update is from YouTube. They have updated the process for the appealing when your monetization is disabled. So just to give an overview, the standard way it works is if your monetization on YouTube is going to be disabled, usually it's disabled and then you have the opportunity to appeal for 21 days. But while that appeal is happening, monetization is disabled. So if YouTube got it wrong, you're still losing out on that revenue that you could have had while the appeal process was going on. So they have changed it. And now in some cases, when a channel is going to be suspended, they will actually get a notice that monetization is scheduled for suspension 7 days in advance. And the idea is this gives the partner the time to submit an appeal. They don't need to rush and submit an appeal like in hours to get the process going. They have a week. If the creator submits the appeal within a week, monetization will not be turned off while the appeal is under review. And that review can take up to 2 weeks. Then once the appeal is done, either monetization just keeps going like it has been, or it's disabled. And if monetization is disabled, the creator can then reapply to the YouTube Partner Program after 90 days. So this new process, it's not available in every situation, and YouTube hasn't really given a lot of details about what situations it will be. But in some cases now, they will allow creators to appeal YouTube Partner Program suspensions for certain policy violations before they take effect. So this is really actually a very creator-friendly update, and I think it's good. Note that this is not going to be the case if the issue is with your AdSense account, and this is not going to be the case if the issue is copyright infringement. Those are separate things that you have to deal with separately. You can't just appeal them. So I want to say hello to everyone who's in the live chat. I see Jolyn and Craig and Ismail. It's good to see you here. Ismail says, I envy people who started this business many years ago. One of them is Peggy, yes. Well, it's an interesting thing that it's easy to look back and say, oh, things would have been so much easier if I'd started a year ago, if I'd started 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's true that a lot of the really popular creators started a long time ago, but there's lots of new people coming up as well. And I think it's really good to keep looking forward. It says that it's nice to hear from experienced people. I hope that's what you feel when you hear me talking about it, because I have been around a long time. And not to think that you can't end up an experienced person yourself. You're just starting further down the timeline. So that is the first big update this week. The other smaller update for YouTube this week is about extensions. Now, a lot of people use various Chrome extensions, Firefox extensions, to change the way they interact with YouTube and other sites. YouTube says that they are strengthening security for extensions on YouTube because these extensions can also end up being malicious sometimes. They can result in hijacking your data, hijacking your account. That means that certain extensions, if you have them running and you're on YouTube, you may have trouble getting the videos to play or accessing other parts of YouTube. And the solution is to turn the extensions off. So this is a change that YouTube made about a week ago. It's probably going to affect some people who are using extensions to block ads on YouTube or make other changes. And there isn't a workaround other than to turn the extensions off. So those are the two big YouTube updates this week. The other video update I wanted to mention is on Twitch. And if you watch videos on Twitch, one of the things that's really difficult is to find content because you have live content, and some of the problem is that you need to be on the platform at the time the live stream is happening. So one thing that Twitch has done is update the Twitch mobile app. This should be available to everyone. And what is different about the app is that it now has a sort of for you feed with live streams that it recommends to you. It should be personalized. And it has a clips feed. Clips are like little segments of previous live streams. And that's a way to find creators on Twitch that you might be interested in watching. I think it's still a bit of an issue because still Twitch is primarily live, and if you miss things live, it's not quite the same thing. But this is Twitch trying to make it easier, especially for new users. They say, while most people watch Twitch on desktop, new users are much more likely to open Twitch on mobile. So this is really partially aimed at new users, because if you're a new user and you open Twitch and you can't find any live streams to watch, you're just going to leave and never come back. So that is what Twitch is doing. And will it help them? I don't know in the long term what Twitch is going to do exactly, because I think it is a limitation to growth that it doesn't have this huge library of content like YouTube does. And then just a little fun thing, there's consumer surveys, and I thought this was really interesting, where it talks about YouTube being the next iteration for TV. And I recommend reading the whole article and what it's arguing, but it had this one table really interesting that says that of the people they surveyed, which of the following have you done because of a YouTube video? And people are saying more than half of people have prepared a new food or beverage, followed a recipe. People say they frequently learn something interesting enough that they want to share it with other people, discovered new discovered new music, repaired something, and almost 20% of people said they visited a new place in the city where they live because of something they saw on YouTube. And I thought this was really interesting because there's a stereotype that YouTube viewers are kind of a passive audience, but really people watch the videos and they're inspired. And of course, some of this is driven by people going to YouTube looking for that information as well. So it's a combination of people discovering new things by accident and using YouTube as a resource to find this information. I thought it was interesting. And I wanted to note that you can get the link to this entire article with all of the stats it has in this week's newsletter. There is a link in the video description. I also want to give a plug for subscribing by email, and that lets me segue into the next update where Beehiiv, which is where I host my newsletter, the email portion of my newsletter, has had a bunch of new features lately, and they're really useful, I think. The first thing that was new is what I mentioned last week, where you can have a progressive web app on mobile for a newsletter that puts an icon on your home screen and that gives you access to all the archives and information. But this week's update is kind of interesting. Audio newsletters. Now, what the heck is an audio newsletter? If you turn it on, then there will be a audio player if you view the post on Beehiiv, and you can see it in the example that I've posted here. There's an audio player that lets you listen to it. So I have set that up for my newsletter, and I used the voice called Sarah. If you listen to it, let me know what you think. I know Craig said he listened to it and it was pretty good, but for some reason it cut off the end. I'm not sure why it did that. I'll have to look and see. But I think that this is actually a really nice benefit of using Beehiiv, and it's a little different than what Substack is doing, which is trying to make it more a social network across multiple newsletters. This is everything that's newsletter specific. So if you try the audio version of my newsletter, let me know what you think. I'm willing to play with the settings, try different voices. I kind of listened to the options and picked the one that sounded best to me, but there are other options as well. Craig says, Peggy should get paid for all the work she does. Well, I do monetize, and so that's a little thing. I would love to get, $100 an hour, though. Maybe someday. And Craig says he liked the audio vision. It's great. It's nice. One of the really cool things is I don't actually have to do much to set it up. It's just a toggle in my Beehiiv newsletter settings. I can turn it on, turn it off. Eileen says, affiliates are happy to see purchased a specific thing notice. That's good. That's on Twitch, I assume. So let's see. What else is new? Okay, so those are all the video updates for this week. The thing I wanted to talk about, though, and close your ears if you don't like discussion of AI stuff, but AI is everywhere. And this week's big news comes from Perplexity. Let me just call that up. So Perplexity AI has launched what they call their Perplexity Publishers Program. I can't say that 10 times fast. Now, Perplexity has come under fire because they have an option to summarize information, summarize the news. And news sites are saying, look, this is actually plagiarizing our articles. So it was not just summarizing, it was republishing whole chunks, even things that were behind a paywall. So they came under fire for this, and Perplexity said, we've got this new thing under development, revenue sharing this. So this is what they're announcing this week. And it's an interesting thing where most of the publishers starting out are big publishers. We're talking like Time, Fortune, Der Spiegel. And one of the features is that publishers in the program can create a customized answer engine. So it's like an AI answer bot thing for their own website that only gives responses from their content, which is kind of nice, right? If you have a news site, you wouldn't necessarily want an AI chatbot summarizing things that points people somewhere else. But the other big thing is that they say they're going to start showing ads and have revenue sharing. The way they describe it, it says, when Perplexity earns revenue from an interaction where a publisher's content is referenced, that publisher will also earn a share. So that is one of the big things that publishers are saying, that these AI companies trained their bots on this huge amount of articles and books and other references without giving any credit, and then they're monetizing them. And the actual writers aren't getting, I should say, actual publishers are not getting a cut. It's not clear where actual writers are in this hierarchy. So there's this new publishers program. It has limited membership. But one of the members of the new program is WordPress. WordPress.com announced that they are partnering with Perplexity. And what they say is you'll be eligible for a piece of the pie, plus increased traffic to your website. That's what WordPress is saying. The exact details are not available yet. So it's not clear how this is going to work exactly. And Perplexity hasn't even started monetizing yet. So there's a lot of questions around this, but it is interesting that WordPress has opted into this, and at least theoretically, WordPress.com writers, bloggers can get a cut of this. Now, I think there's a bunch of caveats to keep in mind. It's not clear there's going to be much money at all. Monetizing with advertising, the revenue streams for that are down over what they used to be. If Perplexity is not making much money with ads on their site, they're not going to have much to share. It's also not clear exactly how Perplexity is going to determine who gets what revenue share. And I think it's probably not great that WordPress is saying you'll get increased traffic to your website, because Perplexity says themselves that click-through rates on their summaries, they say that's not the point, which kind of sounds like they're trying to avoid it. But this is a direct quote from someone at Perplexity. The reason we're doing something that Google never did, meaning pay publishers for scraping their content, is that we don't think the main value we bring to publishers is traffic. And I think it would be disingenuous for us to claim otherwise. So Perplexity is not saying they will send quoted websites any traffic, and it's not clear how this revenue sharing will work, or even if there's going to be that much revenue to share. A lot of questions there, and we'll see what happens. I think that maybe it's a good thing that Perplexity is at least trying to do something that gives publishers a cut of the pie. But is it enough? They still scrape tons of content without permission to train their models. They haven't said anything about how they're going to make sure their models aren't just regurgitating back the exact articles that they trained on. And I think in the long term, it's not great if this isn't sending traffic back to the publishers, to the writers, because that's the sort of unspoken agreement with Google, right? Google indexes the web. Those sites appear in the Google search results, and then people click on those links, so it sends traffic back to those sites. So it's mutually beneficiary, at least in theory. And this is breaking that cycle. So is this good? I'm not sure. But if you use WordPress.com to publish your blog, you should keep an eye out for updates to see how this works. Will an AI answer cite your blog? No way to know that. But it will also be interesting to see if they have protections in place against people trying to game this, because you can imagine people thinking of queries for Perplexity that specifically reference just one particular niche blog. If that's the only answer, maybe that blog will get more revenue. That would kind of break the system too if people cheat. So that is what's happening in the world of publishing. I have a couple really small updates this week. Well, maybe they're not small. They're small to me because I'm not as interested in them. But talking about Meta and AI, Meta has a new model that they call Segment Anything Model 2. So at SAM2. And what this does is identify specific objects in videos and segment them out. And the cool thing about that is you can use it for video editing. This isn't, generating information. This is allowing people to use it for editing. And they talk about using it for creating mixed reality experiences. So like if you're wearing goggles and something appears to be blended in with the background, this makes it lots more realistic if they can segment out different bits of the video. The other update from Meta this week is about creating your own custom AI with AI Studio. This is something you can do as a creator. I think maybe it's open to everyone. I haven't gone into great detail about how this works on the technical level, but there's a new AI Studio. It lets you make your own sort of chatbot. You can give it a personality. One of the options you can have is creating a chatbot based on yourself. This, I think, will run in maybe Messenger and Instagram DMs. And it says specifically it's trained on the information that you might be giving creators, and it uses your tone and expressions. So it's supposed to sound like you. And I'm not so sure about this because even though the responses from the AI are labeled, if it's mimicking the tone of the creator, it's pretending to be the creator. It's kind of a weird situation. I'm not sure how that actually works interacting with fans and other people. So those are this week's updates. I hope you found them interesting. If you read this week's newsletter, you know that I've been sort of thinking about social media. And one of the things that I noticed is that if I look at my followers on X, I use a platform called Fedica. It can tell me, oh, 3 people followed you and 18 people unfollowed you, which isn't great. But I looked at this week's unfollows on X, and all of the accounts are suspended. So these are probably spam accounts, maybe hijacked accounts, and it really is kind of depressing on X that there's so many bot accounts and fake accounts, and I'm not getting new interactions with real people. There's lots of people over on X that I've been interacting with for a long time, but new people are sort of few and far between, and more people are moving off the platform, just using it for updates and announcements. And I've mostly been over on Threads. There's more people there, and I like it. It's not the same thing exactly. Threads is not good for self-promotion in the same way that Twitter was, and Threads really only works well if you join in the conversations there. So it's a different thing, it's a different vibe, but that's what I'm doing. I'm also using an app called OpenViBE. And this app allows me to read my feeds from Mastodon, Bluesky, and they're saying Threads is coming soon. The idea is you have one app, you can read all your social media feeds there, respond to people, post, everything all in one place, which is nice. Once it has Threads, I'll probably use it all the time. So this is useful, and I wanted to say a plug that I am over on Threads. That's where I post more than on Twitter these days, X these days, and I'm mostly reading and lurking on Mastodon and Bluesky. But that seems to be the future. Instead of having these sort of walled gardens, the way X is, the way LinkedIn is, to have it so that people are social across platforms. And those are this week's updates. There's more, of course, as always. Check out this week's post or subscribe to my newsletter. Or links in the video description. Thank you so much for joining me live. Eileen says, nice to see you using StreamYard. And, this is slightly a tangent, but I've been rotating between different web-based platforms for live streaming. They all have their pluses and minuses. I haven't really settled on one that I like the best, so I rotate. And yes, it's on my list to write all this up, and I just haven't had a chance to do it. So StreamYard, of course, is one of the top ones. Restream and Talk Studio are the 3 that I've been using. All have their pluses and minuses. So thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you join me next Sunday and have a fantastic week. I'll see you then.